joined. I can see only one guest. Anyway, so let me begin by just saying that whoever is present, I think Darshan is there. Is it Darshan is a participant or from NPTEL team?
He's not from NPTEL team. I think he's student learner.
Okay, fine. Okay, so okay, then let us begin. So in this second live session on design and implementation of human-computer interfaces, we are going to discuss issues, if any, faced by the learner. So if you have any issue, please go ahead. Let me know so that I can discuss. I'll try to answer your queries if you have anything. So I'll be waiting for your questions. And if you wish to raise any issues related to the material, related to topics, or related to anything related to the course, please go ahead and raise it. I'll be waiting for your question. Please note that there will be no lecture. So please don't wait for any lecture from my side. Please raise your doubts or queries if you have anything directly. You can use the chat option. Okay, Darshan, do you have anything to ask?
No, sir.
Okay.
Sir, but some doubt. But I have a doubt,
Yeah.
sir.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Due to exam registration,
Fine.
when we make payments in exam registration, 3 mails will come, sir. Suddenly 3 mails will come to us showing that payment is successful. Payment will be refunded in some days. What to do, sir?
Okay, payment related issues, I don't think I can answer. I am only the instructor. So I think you have to contact the NPTEL team. So from NPTEL, can anybody help him?
Yes, sir.
So he has some payment related issue. Can you help him regarding this payment for exam?
He can contact to IIT Madras. He can contact to IIT Madras regarding payment related issue. He can write a mail to IIT Madras.
Okay, so Darshan, I think you have to directly contact the NPTEL main office at IIT Madras. They are handling all these issues. So please.
You can write to support. You can write to support@nptel.iitc.ac.in.
Okay, sir. I will try it, sir. Thank you, sir.
I think one more learner joined, Likita. So do you have anything to ask, Likita? Likita, can you hear me? Do you have anything to ask regarding the course, regarding the topics that have been covered or assignments or anything? Even exam? You can unmute yourself if you wish to say anything, or you can put in the chat your queries. You can use the conversation option, chat box, put in your queries. So if any learner has joined, I would just like to reiterate. If you have any query, please come forward, raise it here. I am waiting for your queries. related to the course only. Anything related to the course content, topics, assignments, exam. You can directly raise it by unmuting yourself, or you can use the chat option. So I can see one more has joined, Manojit Chaudhary. Do you have anything to ask, Manojit? Yes, good afternoon, Manojit. Do you have anything to ask? Please go ahead. Are there criteria or frameworks to evaluate the effectiveness of the proposal of HCI guidelines heuristics? The frameworks to evaluate the effectiveness of the proposals of HCI guidelines. I mean to say how to evaluate the guidelines. Is that your question? Whether the guidelines are proper or not? Well, guidelines are not tested as such. Guidelines are results of empirical observations over a long period of time. So it is assumed that those are already proper. So whatever guidelines, set of guidelines or heuristics are there, those were results of practices followed over a long period of time and observations made during those periods. So those are already assumed to be good. So there is no need for separately evaluating their goodness. How to combine HCI and data visualization? HCI is a field. Now, field of study which deals with design, evaluation and implementation of interactive systems. Data visualization is an application area where we build softwares to visualize data. Now these softwares are typically interactive. So whatever principles we need to follow for interactive systems are applicable there as well. If visualization is not interactive, so it is only one-way traffic, that is only things are visualized, but users are not given any control to interact with the data, then HCI is not applicable. But if it is interactive and needs user input for controlling, then whatever guidelines, principles, stages, development stages are there for interactive system development are applicable here as well. Robbie has put in one question. When we design HCI, can we use any software verification tool? Okay, so software verification tool, that is a very interesting question. So in fact, although it is not part of this course, let me just try to answer. So when we use software verification tools, what we verify? We verify certain properties of the system. Now these properties are related to the system traditionally, but when we are dealing with interactive software, we can add properties that are related to the user. And if we have such properties added, then with proper specification of the system, we can verify the properties as well. In fact, there are works related to these verification of interactive software, but those are pretty complex and generally not followed in the development of interactive systems, as the properties and their specifications are quite involved and quite complex, because those are related to human behavior, cognition and expectations of the users. But it is not that it is not there, it is already there, and such verification are done with proper specification of the interactive software. Okay, Monojit, another question you have put in. What methodology for evaluating a haptic interface is recommended? As I think it is mentioned in the relevant lecture in the course, in the guideline part, that and heuristic part, that there are generic guidelines or heuristics for design and evaluation. Also, there can be specific heuristics or guidelines. So the generic guidelines that we have covered are equally applicable for any interface, irrespective of whether it is haptic or not. So those guidelines like Snyderman's 8 golden rules or 7 principles by Norman are applicable there, but those are generic guidelines. There are specific guidelines for specific interfaces. Now, haptic interfaces is a broad area, so there can be more exact interfaces for which the corresponding companies may have, or the developers may have developed their own guidelines. Right now, I cannot tell you any specific guideline for haptic interfaces, but the general guidelines that we have discussed are applicable there as well. What are research area in HCI? In HCI, there are several ways in which research can be done. First of all, there is so assuming that you are from the computer science background, HCI is an interdisciplinary field of study which involves several other fields, and computer science is the central field as per ACM SIGCHI. Now, assuming you have that background, so you can contribute in several ways. You can perform empirical research. That means you can study user behavior for interactive systems, and based on those studies, you can come up with computational models of human behavior. You can develop applications. You can develop systems that are novel and that solves certain problems. For example, in augmented and virtual reality, how to let the user visualize the virtual environment or the virtual objects, how to let the user interact with the environment in a very intuitive manner without introducing cyber sickness. These are issues where you can contribute. Similarly, in e-learning, mobile computing, there are applications that can be developed which actually can make life of an user simpler. So essentially, you can come up with new novel application ideas for different platforms, mobile platforms, wearable platforms, or novel sorry for the interruption. So either in application areas, you can come up with novel applications, say for in ubiquitous computing and for mobile computing, for specific application areas such as education, healthcare. There are novel ideas, novel interaction, novel interfaces you can contribute. Or in a more theoretical sense, you can do empirical research, observe behavior for interactive systems, and based on that, you can come up with models of human behavior, such as typing behavior model, touch behavior model, model of affect during interaction, mental models, several such things. And then you can propose framework to use those models for better interface design. and interaction design. I hope you got some idea. If not, please let me know. Okay, let me take up the next question by Manojit. What is the effect of culture-centric UI in HCI? I don't know what you mean by culture-centric UI. UI are supposed to be human-centric or user-centric, where culture is a part of it. So if you mean the same thing, then anyway, that is the crux of entire HCI. And if there is any difference between user-centric, user-centered, or human-centric UI and culture-centric UI, please let me know. What is ubiquitous computing by Ravi? Okay, ubiquitous computing means a computing environment where the user is using multiple computers without being aware that he or she is using computers. So essentially, the objective is to make the computers disappear from the perception of the user. So the interaction should be so natural that user will feel like interacting with any regular everyday objects, and he or she should not feel that he or she is interacting with special computing devices. That is the whole idea of ubiquitous computing. And there, the role of naturalness, the role of perception, the role of context, many things are important. There are lots of scopes are there to have more natural interaction such that the perception of computers disappear. It is a very rich field with lots of research going on at present. In fact, to get more idea on the idea of ubiquitous computing, Ravi, you can go through my book. I have written one book, Human-Computer Interaction. It was published by Macro Hill. You can go through it. A full chapter is devoted on this idea. You can get a better knowledge on it from that book. I have provided the book details in the chat option. You can check and go through the relevant chapter if you are interested. Monojit, can you send a copy of your book? No, the book is under some copyright by the publisher, so I cannot send it to you. I'm afraid you have to buy a copy. It's not very costly. You can buy. Okay, two more questions have come. One is by Robi. What is I-star model? Is it I-star or L-star? When design HCA can use I-star model. I don't know what is this model, so I cannot answer this question. I-star or L-star model, I am not aware of. So sorry, I can't answer this one. Then Monojit Chaudhary, why is it good practice to use standards and guidelines on designing interfaces? Right. So as I said, the standards and guidelines are results of long period of practical experience, practical knowledge or empirical observations. So when we are using this guidelines or standards, then it will be easier to basically start thinking about the design. Now, if we don't follow the guidelines, that means if we don't use the existing knowledge of how to design an usable interface or how to design a good interface, then of course, if we rely on our intuition when we do not have much exposure to this field, then of course we will end up with bad designs that are not going to be useful to the end users. So from that point of view, it is always good to use the standards and guidelines that are already developed, which contain the existing knowledge of how to come up with such interfaces so that end users find them usable. That is the simple reason. Okay, Likhita, major areas where we get the questions in final exam. There will be questions from all areas, so I cannot specifically tell you any major areas. So it is evenly distributed over all the topics that we have covered. It's not that it is concentrated on a few topics and other topics are not touched upon. So I suggest you get the idea of all the topics. Right, Ravi. What is requirement engineering? There are a lot of ambiguity. How we'll remove ambiguity? Requirement engineering essentially means how do you gather the requirement and specify it in a way which is implementable. Now, in our context, we have two types of requirements. One is functional requirements and one is usability requirements. Now, usability requirements, of course, okay, I think Monojit has responded to Ravi. Thank you for that. Anyway, so I would like to restrict myself to the topics that are covered in this course rather than unnecessarily burdening with other information. So that is the thing that I am following. Since this framework is not part of this course, so I will not spend much time or any time on it. So regarding requirement engineering, there are a lot of ambiguity. So as I said, two types of requirements are there, usability and functional. Functional requirements are essentially requirements that are gathered from the clients. And usability are essentially requirements that are gathered after observing the end users. Now, some of those requirements are directly convertible to functional requirements. Other requirements are not directly convertible, but of course we can always use the requirements to judge whether our interface satisfies those, although those are not directly implementable. So if possible, we can convert it to functional requirement and then implement those requirements in the system. And those which we cannot convert to function, we can use those for judging the quality of the interface. Yes, so prototyping essentially is a way to express the findings from ethnographic study or contextual inquiry or study based on cultural probes, any method to elicit requirements. Now, once we elicit requirements, we come up with the idea of a design. And then based on that design, we create a prototype so that we can evaluate quickly whether the design idea is going to lead to usable systems. So ethnography is primarily meant for eliciting requirements. Based on those requirements, we go for design, then prototyping, and then evaluation. And that is how these two are related. Now, unless we prototype and evaluate, we will never know whether our design ideas are going to be usable. So it is always useful to go for prototyping after requirement studies and the initial design ideas. Okay, Tejas. So these are difficult to answer. Of course, we want you to read the material that are mentioned at the end of each lectures for better understanding. And the questions, as you might be aware of, questions will have both recall based as well as open type, where you have to use your understanding to answer those questions rather than simply recalling the concepts that are covered in the lectures or in the slides. So it is always advisable to go through the reference materials for better understanding so that you can answer the open type questions. Otherwise, if you just rely on the slides and transcripts, then you may find it a bit difficult to answer the open type questions. Although open type questions are not very difficult, I would say, but still it is always advisable to read the books and the materials that are mentioned for better understanding.
So good evening, sir. Nice to interact with you. We've been following your lectures, and it's nice to interact with you in person. I have purchased your book and I am going through it.
Okay, right.
Just
Who is
to
this?
have
May I know?
Tejas.
Tejas, yes, yes. You have bought the book. That is good. Which book you are talking of?
Your book itself, sir. Human-computer interaction design.
Okay, okay. So
on Amazon, I could not find the hard copy as such, so I have purchased the ebook. and
Okay.
I'm going through on that same notes. I'm not from a design background. I am from a civil engineering background, but I'm looking to pursue into UI UX and human interaction design. So I thought this course will help me to give me a broader spectrum as to what else is, can be looked into before just becoming a normal UI UX, aspirant.
Yes, so here, since you raised this issue, I would just like to add a few points. So if you are trying to focus primarily on the UI UX point of view, then actually that is purely a design idea. So their
Correct.
engineering is not that much important.
Correct.
But you are trying to be a developer for systems, then
Okay.
engineering will be very much important, along with the idea of how to design the UI UX.
Correct.
Now, my
Correct.
book is primarily focused on engineering aspects rather than only on design aspects.
Yeah. My whole idea was that, since we know the engineering aspect, I think that might help me design a better system or an interface, right? Now, when
Yes.
we talk about Snyder rules and, all the golden 10 rules that we have to follow, few things that here and there, which a normal UX or a UI designer might not really know, like how to have similar icons and error handling, all such messages. I think that those points are actually giving me more insights as to how I can develop screens and how I can be more empathetic towards the user. I think I am taking this course through that perspective, and I've been enjoying the classes as of now. We are at week 8. So I did buy the book. So that all these the diagrams and everything were not familiar with what was in the book. So just the reason I was just trying to bridge the gap as to where if I'm missing something or no, just had to
Yes, yes.
look on.
Definitely. The book is more explanatory compared to whatever has been covered in
Uh,
the lecture. Although the primary part, some part of it is based on the book. That is
Okay.
true.
If I can request the team to maybe give us the PPTs or the, the material that is used on your lectures, because I don't seem to find a transcript section in the NPTEL portal for the course.
Actually,
Every
transcripts are supposed to be made available to all the learners. So I have already, I think up to lecture number 12, they have made the transcripts. So it is an ongoing process. I think before the course ends, all the transcripts should be available.
Okay, sir. Okay, that will be great. Thank you, sir. Nice speaking to you.
Thank you for buying the book.
Yeah, no problem, sir. I mean, it definitely helps,
So
I mean,
are you in some means are you working or
yes, I basically teach structures for architecture students. My background is structural engineering. I'm a civil engineer basically. But during teaching in the course of teaching architecture, I taught one subject called design thinking last semester. So that's
yes.
where it sparked the idea of design thinking, the process of design thinking. So which has led me towards UI UX and at the same time picking up your course. So hopefully I will do well in the exam as well.
Yes, all the best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Okay, so any more questions?
So I had one more doubt, if you don't mind.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. So in the application form, you had said that you will share the results to potential recruiters. Will that happen from your end or through the NPTEL, sir?
No, I don't think I have mentioned any such thing. I think NPTEL probably have
Ah,
mentioned.
okay. All right.
So
Okay, I'll
you
get
can
back.
contact NPTEL, IIT Madras NPTEL team
Sure.
directly.
I'll do that, sir.
Regarding this.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so is there any more question from the learners? I think only 2 are left. Monojit Chaudhary is there only. So Monojit, do you have any more questions? If not, then I think we can close this session. So let me see. Do you have any more, some more questions? So please go ahead. It's time to close. Please let me know quickly. What is your question? I don't think you have any questions, although you said yes. That is just to respond to me or to put in question. Anyway, I think we have already crossed the how to change user behavior to use a product. That is a very interesting question. Of course, we don't. The whole idea of HCI of this field is to design the system so that users find it as per his or her expectations. So we ideally should not think that let us force user to change their behavior so that they find the product. If that is the thinking, then of course that product is not likely to become usable. So our objective should be not to force any users to change the behavior to use a product. Okay, so with that, I would like to conclude this session. So there will be one more session, and I would like to request you to come back and raise your queries there as well. So we are already crossed the time limit. So thank you very much to all of you for this interesting conversation. I hope I managed to answer your queries, and looking forward to see you in the next live session. If you have any more queries, please come and raise those during the next live session. Thank you. Have a good day and goodbye.